In this presentation, we will learn about India's freedom struggle and the role of media. At the time of the First War of Independence, there were many newspapers operational in India. Many of these, like Bangadut of Raja Ram Mohan Roy, Rastguftar of Dadabhai Nauroji, and Gyaneshan, advocated social reforms and thus helped arouse national awakening. In 1857, Payam-e-Azadi started publication in Hindi and Urdu, calling upon the people to fight against the British. The paper was soon confiscated, and anyone found with a copy of the paper was persecuted for sedition. The first Hindi daily, Samachar Darpan, and Sultan ul Akbar faced trial in 1957 for having published a farman by Bahadur Shah Zafar urging the people to drive the British out of India. This was followed by the notorious Gagging Act of Lord Canning, where restrictions were imposed on newspapers and periodicals. Some newspapers played a notable role in the struggle against the British. The Hindi Patriot, established in 1853 by Girish Chandra Josh, became popular under the editorship of Harish Chandra Mukherjee. In 1861, the paper published a play Neel Darpan and launched a movement against the British, urging the people to stop cultivating the crop for the traders. This resulted in the formation of a Neel Darpan Commission. Later, the paper was taken over by Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar. The paper strongly opposed the government's excesses and demanded that Indians be appointed to top government posts. The Indian Mirror was the other contemporary of this paper, which was very popular among the reading public. Another newspaper, Amrit Bazar Patrika, was being published from Jashore. It was also critical of the government, with the result that its proprietors faced trial and conviction. In 1871, the Patrika moved to Calcutta, and another act was passed to suppress it and other native journals. Marathi Press. Mahadev Govind Ranade, a leading leader of Maharashtra, used to write in Gyan Prakash as well as the Indu Prakash. Both these journals helped awaken the conscience of the downtrodden masses. Another Marathi weekly, Kesari, was started by Tilak from 1st Jan 1881. He, along with Agarkar and Chiplunkar, started another weekly journal, Maratha, in English. The editor of the Deccan Star, Nam Joshi, also joined them, and his paper was incorporated with Maratha. Tilak and Agarkar were convicted for writing against the British and the Diwan of Kolhapur. Tilak's Kesari became one of the leading media to propagate the message of freedom movement. It also made the anti-partition movement of Bengal a national issue. In 1908, Tilak opposed the Sedition Ordinance. He was later exiled from the country for 6 years. The Hindi edition of Kesari was started from Nagpur and Benares. The press and the first session of Congress. The editors commanded a very high reputation at the time of the birth of the Indian National Congress. One could measure the extent of this respect from the fact that those who occupied the frontline seats in the first ever Congress session held in Bombay in December 1885 included some of the editors of Indian newspapers. The first ever resolution at this session was proposed by the editor of the Hindu, G. Subramanya Iyer. In this resolution, it was demanded that the government should appoint a committee to inquire into the functioning of Indian administration. The second resolution was also moved by a journalist from Pune, Chiplunkar, in which the Congress was urged to demand for the abolition of India Council, which ruled the country from Britain. The third resolution was supported by Dadabhai Naoroji, who was a noted journalist of his time. The fourth resolution was also proposed by Dadabhai Naoroji. There were many Congress presidents who had either been the editors or had started the publication of one or the other newspaper. In this context, particular mention may be made of Firoz Shah Mehta, who had started the Bombay Chronicle, and Pandit Madan Malviya, who edited daily Hindustan. He also helped the publication of Leader from Allahabad. Motilal Nehru was the first chairman of the board of directors. Lala Lajpat Rai inspired the publication of 3 journals, the Punjabi, Vande Mataram, and the People from Lahore. During his stay in South Africa, Gandhiji had brought out Indian Opinion, and after settling in India, he started the publication of Young India, Navjeevan, Harijan, Harijan Sevak, and Harijan Bandhu. C.R. Das and Subhash Chandra Bose were not journalists, but they acquired the papers like Forward and Advance, which later attained national status. Jawaharlal Nehru founded the National Herald. Revolutionary movement and the press. As far as the revolutionary movement is concerned, it did not begin with guns and bombs, but it started with the publication of newspapers. The first to be mentioned in this context is Yugantar publication, which was started by Barindra Kumar Ghosh, who edited it also. When the Ghadar Party was organized in America, Lala Hardayal started publication of the journal Ghadar. Within 1 year, millions of copies of this journal were published in Hindi, Urdu, Punjabi, Gujarati, Marathi, and English, and sent to India and all parts of the world where Indians were residing. In the beginning, the copies of the journal were concealed in parcels of foreign cloth sent to Delhi. It was also planned to smuggle the printing press into India for this purpose. But then the war broke out and it became impossible to import printing machinery from abroad. Lala Hardayal was arrested in America and deported to India. One of his followers, Pandit Ramchandra, started publishing Hindustan Ghadar in English. With the US joining the war, the party workers were arrested by the American government. When the trial was on, one of the rivals of Pandit Ramchandra managed to obtain a gun and shoot himself in jail. The death of Ramchandra led to the closure of this paper. In 1905, Shyamji Krishna Varma started publication of a journal, Indian Sociologist, from London. It was used to publish reports of political activities taking place at the India House in London. In 1909, two printers of this journal were convicted. Shyamji Krishna Varma left England for Paris, from where he started publication of the journal. Later on, he had to leave for Geneva. He continued to bring out the journal from there for 2 or 3 years more. In Paris, Lala Hardayal, in collaboration with Madam Kama and Sardar Sinharaoji Rana, brought out Vande Mataram and Talwar. After Yugantar, it was Vande Mataram that played a significant role in the freedom struggle. As far as the Hindi papers were concerned, they looked to government for support for some time. Bharatendu Harishchandra was the first to start a journal, Kavi Vachan Sudha, in 1868. Its policy was to give vent to the miseries of the people of India. When the Prince of Wales visited India, a poem was published in his honor. The British authorities were given to understand that the poem could also mean that the Prince of Wales should get a shoe beating. The government aid to journals like Kavi Vachan Sudha was stopped on account of publishing what was objectionable from the government point of view. Bharatendu Harishchandra resigned from his post of an honorary magistrate. His friends Pratap Naren Mishra and Bal Krishna started publication of two important political journals. A number of other publications were also seen across the country. There was not a single province in India which did not produce a journal or newspaper to uphold the cause of freedom struggle.